welcome. I'm Ijoma Onyaso. Tonight, UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon asks federal government to ensure the unconditional release of the abducted Chibok girls. The UN scribe also meets captains of industry, talks about job creation, inclusive growth and sustainable development goals. Channels Television and United Nations seal a deal on broadcast partnership. President Buhari orders probe into weapons procurement from 2007 as Jonathan's National Security Advisor, Colonel Sambo Dasuki, is charged to court. And, of course, the 3 Americans and a Briton who fought a suspected terror attack on a train will receive France's top honor from President Francois Hollande.
On business news tonight, the Debt Management Office received documents from 11 states to begin the process of transition from bank loans to federal government bonds.
And on sports news tonight, Nigeria Table Tennis Federation unveils German tactician Martin Adomite ahead of next month's All-African Games in Congo-Brazzaville.
The UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon today met with President Muhammadu Buhari, demanding the unconditional release of the Chibok schoolgirls. Now, the UN scribe, who rounded off his 2-day visit today, described the abduction of the girls as intolerable and inhuman. In very strong terms, he condemned the activities of Boko Haram in northeast Nigeria and asked world leaders to collaborate with Nigeria in the fight against terror. He says the military has done well in the execution of its mandate, asking the government to tackle unemployment, expand the educational framework in the northeast, and provide better living conditions for the IDPs. Our State House correspondent Chukwu Maunekose reports.
The Nigerian government takes this visit very seriously and even throws a red carpet to receive the UN scribe as they arrive the threshold of the presidential villa right on time. Some photo moments. And it takes him upstairs right into his office for talks that lasted for about an hour. Talks that centered on development issues, human rights, peace and security, especially how to tackle terrorism, including Boko Haram in northern Nigeria. Speaking to State House correspondents, he has a solidarity message for Nigerians and the Chibok girls, wherever they are, calling for their unconditional release by those holding them captive.
This week, ladies and gentlemen, we'll witness the 500th day of the kidnapping of the Chibok schoolgirls. I want to reiterate my support for the Chibok girls and so many other innocent abducted girls and boys whose names and fate remain unknown. It is intolerable that their lives and schooling has been disrupted in this way. The whole world has been moved by their fate. I once again call in the strongest possible terms on those responsible to unconditionally release these girls and many other abducted children.
The United Nations Secretary General acknowledged the smooth transition process in the country and called on countries around the world to emulate Nigeria. He salutes the president's stand against corruption.
President Buhari has embarked on an agenda for change, and I commend him highly for prioritizing insecurity, corruption, anti-corruption, and unemployment issues. My message is simple. The United Nations supports your efforts to advance hope, peace, sustainable development, and human rights in a comprehensive way.
President Muhammadu Buhari thanked the United Nations and the international community for their assistance so far. He laments the destruction and displacement of Nigerian citizens by Boko Haram and called on the United Nations to help.
We have discussed with him the difficult time Nigeria finds itself, the destruction of infrastructure, especially in the northeast, the rehabilitation of the infrastructure, and the over 1.5 million internally displaced persons that have to be morally, physically, and materially rehabilitated. And the efforts, we think the United Nations Secretary General can convey to the United Nations so that Nigeria can be helped in the identified problems we have.
The President and the United Nations Secretary General said they will further this discussion in the United Nations General Assembly slated for next month. Chukwuma Onwekusi, Channels Television News.
And as Mr. Ban's visit progressed, he laid a wreath at the scene of the bomb explosion carried out on the UN building in Abuja 4 years ago by members of the terror group Boko Haram. Mr. Ban urged the workers not to be deterred by the tragedy, but continue to work for the advancement of humanity. A suicide bomber on August the 26th, 2011, had rammed a car laden with bombs through security barricades into the UN building, resulting in the blast that ripped through the structure, killing over 20 people and wounding over 70 others. The blast caused massive devastation to parts of the building, which is the headquarters of the global body in Nigeria, providing offices for hundreds of employees working for various organs of the organization. While Nigeria's political and business leaders have been offered a partnership in achieving the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals agenda by 2030. Now, that call was made today during a luncheon between the United Nations Secretary General and some leaders of the Nigerian business economy. The new relationship is part of the United Nations quest for inclusive global partnership with world leaders in order to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
Captains of industry, philanthropists and notable economic policy makers meeting with the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, finding a permanent solution to Nigeria's socio-economic challenges in relation to the core of the United Nations is the basis of this meeting. The session begins with an exemplary update on the philanthropic contributions of the private sector to societal development. And President of the Dangote Group, Mr. Aliko Dangote, gave this address.
Over time, many business leaders have set up foundations and other platforms for philanthropy as a way of giving back to their communities and filling in the gaps in the provision of social services as a way of wealth creation and alleviating of poverty. I, for example, set up Dangote Foundation in 1994 based on a simple premise: to whom much is given, much is required. That has meant for me looking at the poor that suffer among us and being compelled to bring some relief.
Delighted to meet the magnates, Mr. Ban immediately shared an update on the significance of Nigeria to the United Nations 17-point goals.
This is a pivotal year for humanity. This is a year for global action and cooperation. Next month, the world leaders, including President Buhari, will come to participate in the special summit meeting dedicated to discuss about future development agenda in the name of Sustainable Development Agenda with a set of 17 Sustainable Development Goals.
He further states the areas of partnership between the body and the business leaders.
Our pathway for the next 15 years, targeting 2030. In December, in Paris, the leaders will come and they have pledged to adopt for the first time the universal and ambitious, robust climate change agreement. Those are two top priorities of the United Nations. One more supporting priority is financing for development, however visionary good visions you may have, if you don't have financial support, technological support, it's a pie in the sky.
Outlines of the Sustainable Development Goals were subsequently presented by the Special Advisor to the Secretary General, Mrs. Aminat Mohammed.
The Sustainable Development Agenda is a paradigm shift. It's not the MDGs 2.0. It is a new way of addressing how we will tackle development, and in a way in which we bring in the environmental, the social, and the economic dimensions as an integrated whole. It will be about what we do with our domestic resource mobilization, and key to that are going to be revenues, and revenues mean business. And therefore, to find the incentives that bring you all together, the innovations that make sure we include, is going to be incredibly important.
The greater part of the meeting dwelled on how the United Nations plans to ease the challenges of emerging philanthropists in Nigeria, and this held behind closed doors. A possible indication that the UN is confident in Nigeria.
In part 2, after the break, more on the UN scribe's visit. We'll take you to Abuja, where we have the Executive Director of the UNFPA, Professor Babatunde Oshotime. That's in a moment. You join us again.